in plays of the 18th and 19th centuries, beginning with the 18th century. Great plays like School for Scandal, The Rivals, She Stoops to Conquer, and the first ever musical, The Beggar's Opera by John Gay, first performed at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane under the management of a man called John Rich. And it's said that the Beggar's Opera made Rich gay and gay rich. Incidentally, it's being performed at this very moment at our National Theatre in London in yet another new version. Not the Threepenny Opera this time, but the Villain's Opera, as it's called. Anyway, this was the era of these great plays. Now, thinking of the 18th century, first of all, what about capturing the spirit of the time? Look at the paintings of the time. Look at the engravings of the time, particularly those by William Hogarth, The Idle Apprentice, The Rake's Progress, all those other series which show the people of the day living the life of the day. Read the poetry of the time. The Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope. On a Favourite Cat, Drowned in a Tub of Goldfishes by Thomas Gray, great poem. The poetry of William Blake. And also look particularly at the prologues and the epilogues to the plays. The prologue to School for Scandal is a perfect example of how to approach the text, and it gives you an inkling of the style. Almost immediately you start reading it and preparing it. A School for Scandal. Tell me, I beseech you, needs there a school such modish art to teach you? Pointing of lines, fine precise diction, and all the other things. So what does it really need, this period, the 18th century? First of all, an air of elegance. Studied control of your limbs. By that I mean not letting your hands and arms fly all over the place, but an awareness of your movement, an awareness of your position. And talking about position, I'm in totally the wrong position for the 18th century now, with my knee crossed, because don't do it. Right. So I'll correct myself, and let's continue on with the class. The next thing, of course, it demands an erect carriage, particularly of the head and shoulders. Why? The men wearing wigs, if you start slouching in a wig, you look like a depressed spaniel. And ladies with your huge headdresses and so on, it's impossible to slouch. You have to hold yourselves well. So just as you're sitting there, will you please sit without slouching? Thank you very much. And now, will you look elegant by feeling elegant? By feeling that the blouse you're wearing, the shirt you're wearing, the trousers you're wearing are of the top quality. The most elegant materials, the finest materials. Let's look at you, please, looking elegant. And look so elegant that you look across at somebody else at the other end of the line and think how inelegant they may be, right? Just look at each other and have this studied air of elegance. Right, we'll stop that there before fights begin. Ladies, remember also you wore a corset, and so the upper body was held firm and upright. Very often the men wore corsets as well. It was an area and a time of strict formality. If you read any letters of the time, you will see that a husband addresses his wife in the letters as my dear Mrs. So-and-so. Not my dear Mabel, my dear Janet, whatever, but my dear Mrs. Surface. And they called each other that in public, Mr. and Mrs. So there was that much formality in writing, and even more formality in the behavior. Husbands used to bow to wives. Wives used to curtsy to husbands. Children used to curtsy to their parents and bow to their parents on being given an order. Servants, of course, used to bow when entering a room, used to curtsy, bowing the men, curtsying the women, when taking an order, when leaving the room, and so on. Let's just try that. But before we do all that, let us learn something about these bows and curtsies. So, 18th century curtsy first. Ladies, will you stand up, please? First of all you do, it's very, very similar to the Restoration curtsy, but not quite as flamboyant. So the step to the side is not quite as big. So you step to the side, we will step to our right here, and at the same time a slight bend, and then go up on your toes, plie, still on your toes, and then down again. And of course you balance it with the arms. So going to the side, you may swing your arms up and so on. You would have your fan in your hand. So elegantly bowing and curtsying. Can you try the curtsy first? Ready, go. To the side, a sweep. That's it. Thank you. And now will you do it, please, with a smile on your face and joy in your heart. You are curtsying to somebody who is magnificent. Are you ready? Go. Up to the side and down. Thank you very much. And will you change places with the gentleman, please? Now, the gentleman's bow of this period is very similar again to the Restoration, except again not as flamboyant. So, you start generally in a fourth position, that is one foot in front of another. I would suggest you have your free hand behind your back here. You take the hat off, and you take it down to the side, and very often it was taken in a right angle, that sort of thing there, like that. At the same time, you bend and you take your leg forward. It was more customary to take the opposite leg forward, i.e. the left leg as you do the right arm, but you could in fact use either foot. So let's try it, please, and we're going to put the left leg forward. We take the hat and we go down. And we recover forwards. We step forwards and put our hat on and adjust it, and there we are. So let me see that. Are you ready, please? And bow. And up you come, recovering forwards. Thank you very much. Now, if you're wearing the tricorn hat, that's the hat with 3 points. You always have 1 point to the front. Don't have it sideways. Always a point to the front and the other 2 at the side there. So you're holding the front point here. Again, you go down. And this is more usually done with a right angle there. And up you come and put it on. So let's try that. Ready? And down you go. And now will you put a line to it, please? And the line is that immortal saying, "Good morning, my lady." Are you ready, please? Ready, go.
Good morning, my lady.
Thank you very much. And recover forwards. Thank you very much. And sit down. Now we're going to have 2 ladies. We're going to have Amber, we're going to have Jennifer. Amber, would you stand at that side? And Jennifer, would you stand at that side? So we're going to do another style of curtsy. And this curtsy is called the curtsy en passant, which means the curtsy as you are passing each other. And this is ideal if you do a crowd scene in a play and you have lots of people moving. And this is where the ladies would walk past each other. I will be Amber for the time being, and you're going to go on that side of me, if you will, Jennifer. And all we do, we walk forward with small steps and we dip as we go past each other and incline our heads to each other. So will you come back, Jennifer? And let's just try that. Are you ready? The curtsy en passant. Ready, go? Don't stop. That's fine. Thank you. Don't stop in the middle. Go back, please. Ready? Again? Ready? Go. Thank you. People who are watching, will you please encourage your person? So you're either encouraging this one or that one to do well, please. Are you ready? Right. Who gets the most smiles? Go. And thank you. And give a line. The line is, "My lady." That's all, as you pass each other. Ready, go.
My lady.
Thank you very much. And sit down. Give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. So, the curtsy, the bow, the curtsy en passant. Now let's see how this was done in plays. Of course, servants didn't do this. All servants did always was just a simple bow like this would be fine for the men, or a simple bob like that for the ladies. So let us look at a scene from School for Scandal, right at the beginning, where a servant comes into the room, and let's see how they would behave. So, let me see. We'll have Amber, please, as the servant. we will have Sarah as Lady Sneerwell, and we will have Julie as Mrs. Candour, who comes in. So would you kindly stand up, please? Right, first of all, Mrs. Candour, would you go to that side? Thank you very much. And will the servant go to that side as well? That's great. Now, you are there with Joseph Surface. So will you play Joseph Surface? Joseph. This is biased because your name is the same as the character in the play. Were you named after him?
No.
Oh. Will you get together? You are talking together, that's fine. And the maid comes in. Now, the first thing she would do would give a little bob. So in you come. Thank you. Not too much, just a little one. Thank you. You would then wait till Lady Sneerwell turned to you. You wouldn't say anything until she looked at you. Then she turns to you, go, and you give the line.
Madam, Mrs. Kendra is below, and if your ladyship is at leisure, we'll leave her carriage.
Beg her to come in.
Thank you. You would curtsy again, and you would go out. Thank you very much. Now, you're about to start talking, Sir Joseph, not Sir Joseph. I'm already knighting you. This is the future, right? Just you start talking to her, and she says, quiet, ready, go.
Hush. Here she comes.
Right. The maid would come in first, and she would hold the door open. That's it. That's it. And she would bob as Mrs. Candour came in. Thank you. Mrs. Candour would curtsy, and you would curtsy as well. Thank you. Curtsy to her. You would curtsy to each other. You would also curtsy to Sir Joseph, who would come forward and bow. He'd do it at the same time. Then you would just do that to the maid. Thank you. And she would bob and go out again. So let's do all that little bobs and curtsies in one, if you can, please. School for Scandal, Act 1, Scene 1, ready from the beginning. Thank you. If you think they did it well, give them a round of applause. If you think they did it badly, sit there looking unhappy. Ready? Off we go. Anne.
Madam, Mrs. Kendra is below, and...
Okay, small point, don't fiddle with your hands. Keep your hands still. Keep your hands to yourself. Right, hold them together here rather than at your sides. Thank you. Do it again, please. Ready? Go. Wait.
Madam, Mrs. Kendra is below, and if your ladyship is at leisure, we'll leave her carriage.
Beg her to come in. Hush. Here she is.
My dear Lady Sneerwell.
Thank you, and I think you could say it as you actually do your curtsy. My dear Lady Sneerwell, and of course as you're coming into the scene you've got to lift it. So please belt it out. Don't be afraid, if you're playing in this period, of just getting the lines out. Don't play in, play out. So now, can we have the same scene again, finally, with panache, with loudness, with volume. Fill the theatre, please. Ready? Off we go.
Madam, Mrs. Kendra is below, and if your ladyship is at leisure, we'll leave her carriage.
Beg her to come in. Hush. Here she is.
My dear Lady Sneerwell.
Thank you very much. All right, sit down. Give them a round of applause. Right, thank you. Of course, I made a cut there. She didn't suddenly leap up from the carriage, up 6 flights of stairs, and was suddenly appearing through the door. But this illustrates the maid bobbing when given an order, bobbing when leaving the room, and so on. So get your servants working in that way. Now, what else about this period to remember? First of all, ladies, your faces should be pale. This was a time when any sort of sunburn or browning or bronzing was frowned on, because then you were thought of as being the lowest of the low, a peasant of the lower classes. Nowadays we spend dollars in this place, quaint American money. We spend that going to these suntan lounges and all that to get brown, but in that period, no. So ladies, a pale face, a pale complexion. The next thing is men, clean shaven during most of the century. So get rid of beard, get rid of stubble, don't have it. The next thing, patches in this period. And these were small pieces, sometimes of cloth, sometimes of leather, very small patches which could be put on various parts of the face. Now the reason for this was, as soon as you put a dark patch on a pale face, it makes the face even paler. The contrast serves to, the patch serves to provide the necessary contrast. Sometimes these patches were in the shape of stars or crescents, even coaches and horses. If you wore one on your right cheek, it denoted you were a member of the Conservative Party, or the Tory Party as it was called then. On the left, the Whigs, which is the Liberal Party nowadays. These are small points, and there are lots of pictures in books of where to put these beauty spots, these patches, to enhance the appearance. Men wore them as well. They were also used to cover up sores, you know, scabs by the pox. Not only the smallpox, but also venereal diseases. They would be covered up, the marks on the face, with these patches. So if you see anybody wearing a patch nowadays, the first thing to do before going out with them, ladies, is say, lift your patch. And see what happens. So, patches. Accessories. Well, the fans are still used in this period, but by 1740, the fans were immense. They were big. They were about 2 feet across, like this one here. That. 2 feet, or even bigger. So instead of the little fans that we had in the Restoration, we are now getting these great big fans, which are handled in the same way. An extension of the arm, held exactly the same as like the weapon of the period, the rapier, and so on, not held like that, and used in any way you like, but nearly always closed. And, of course, there were other accessories. Snuff was still used, and remember, when we looked at the Restoration, we discovered the different ways of taking... I can't get the lid closed. Let's try it again. Usually the problem is getting the lid open. Let's try. Okay, you take out a pinch of snuff, you close the box, put it away, and dust yourself down, and so on. That we did in the Restoration period. It was still used. In fact, a young gentleman was thought to be totally incomplete in his costume without his snuff box. Sometimes the snuff boxes were in the top of the canes. So the gentleman would have his walking cane, and at the top of that would be a snuff box. Watches were used a great deal, fob watches. Also, lace handkerchiefs began to be used a great deal to dust yourself down. And of course, a great business started in the stealing of handkerchiefs, which continued right into Dickens's time. And if you read Oliver Twist, you'll know there how Fagin used to have his gang going stealing men's handkerchiefs. Well, this all started in this period, when the men had their handkerchiefs, their beautiful handkerchiefs, hanging out of the handkerchief pocket. So all these things you can use. It was an age of quiet elegance. When you're doing any work in the 18th century, remember to stand tall. Whenever you're working in the 18th century, adventure and be bold. Let the lines fly out to the audience. And please remember always that every movement you make should be planned in advance. Every handling of the accessory should be planned in advance. So everything becomes precise, elegant, the word I used before, and has this superb finish, which is the style of this particular period. Well, let's see now how these bows and curtsies look in costume of the time. Before we get on to the plays of the 19th century, there is something I should have mentioned in the 18th, something that began that continues to this day, and that is the drinking of tea, or tea, as it was called. However, in the 18th century, when tea was first introduced, it was drunk in a slightly different way than the way we drink it today. First of all, you would have a cup with no handles, just like a little bowl. Also, I want you to imagine there's rather a deep saucer around it. Unfortunately, being old and clumsy, I broke the saucer before the recording. So imagine it. There is the saucer. Now, this is how you would hold the saucer in your hand, you would take the tea, it would be poured into the cup, you would lift the cup together with the saucer and drink from it. Or, and this was perfectly acceptable, you would pour the tea or tea into the saucer, put the cup down, hold the saucer and drink from the saucer. And that was equally acceptable. So if you're taking tea in any plays in the 18th century, remember those ways of doing it. But please, 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 no handles on the cup. It was not used, the handle, until much later in Victorian times. But now, let's get on to the 19th century, indeed, the time of Queen Victoria, who came to the throne in the middle of the century. An age of great playwrights. Playwrights like Tom Taylor, who wrote Our American Cousin, who wrote Ticket of Leave Man, both of them very, very popular plays in England and America. Tom Robertson, who wrote plays like Society, Caste, Strife. Now, Tom Robertson introduced realism into the theatre. Up till then, things like doorknobs, for instance, on a door would be painted onto the door. They wouldn't be the real thing. There would be a table painted onto the scenery with a pot of flowers on the table. This seems rather ridiculous to us now, but at the time it was accepted. But it was Tom Robertson who brought realism. So there would be a real table, real flowers, and also real doorknobs. And there's still the expression known in English theatre, doing it with Tom Robertson's doorknobs, which means doing it as realistically as possible. Then there was Arthur Wing Pinero, the great writer of farces such as Dandy Dick, The Magistrate, plays which are still very popular today. J.M. Barrie, who of course in 1904, I'm getting a bit late now, wrote Peter Pan, but he wrote other wonderful plays like Dear Brutus. And of course it was the age of Gilbert and Sullivan. W.S. Gilbert, who wrote plays as well as the lyrics for the operas, Sir Arthur Sullivan, who wrote this majestic music. Now I've missed out two, and I've missed them out purposely because I want us to concentrate on the type of plays that these men wrote. The first was called Dion Boucicault, and he was the author of melodramas. Great, wonderful melodramas, such as London Assurance, which has been one of the greatest hits our Royal Shakespeare Company in England has ever had with a non-Shakespeare play. Dion Boucicault was an actor, a manager, and a playwright. He knew what went in the theatre. He knew how to make audiences happy. And believe me, those plays can still make audiences happy this very day. Plays like The Corsican Brothers, which was made into a silent movie and later movies as well, full of swashbuckling fights and all kinds of mistaken identities. And plays like The Chokran, again, a superb melodrama. And the second one, of course, is Oscar Wilde, the great writer of high comedy, with plays like Lady Windermere's Fan and The Importance of Being Earnest. Well, before we look at the plays of the period, let's look at how people greeted each other in this particular century. Now, of course, many people still behaved at the beginning of the century in the way they behaved in the 18th. So you have to decide in your plays whether the 18th century bow would be appropriate or the 19th. So as the 19th century went on, the bows became less. That is, there was less flurry, there was less of the sort of formality and flurry to them all. Let's stand up, please, gentlemen first, and learn the male bow that is right for the plays of the 19th century. It is very simple, and get into the habit, gentlemen, I suggest, of always standing with one foot slightly in front of another, and in this century you can't go far wrong if, when wondering what to do with your hands, you put them behind your back here. Now, bowing is very simple. You just bring both feet together, hands at the side, and you bow. And that's all it is. And you recover forwards. So if I was saying to you, good morning, gentlemen, you would say, good morning. So I'll do it. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thank you, and sit down. Ladies, you stand up. Now you have a curtsy which is still used today. It is used when one meets the Queen, when one curtsies to royalty. It is used by debutantes at the balls. And it is slightly unusual, but very simple. Now, all you do is take one foot, usually the right foot, round in a circle to behind. And at the same time, as you're doing that, you go down with spine erect and eyes downcast. So, would you try that, please? Are you ready? Go. And have the hands this time on the skirt. Ladies, don't put hands behind your backs ever. They think you're fiddling with your corset. Ready? Down you go again. Go. Thank you. Round. It's a swing round. That's fine. Now, there's a slightly more elaborate one, and that is where you step to the side first. So you step to the side, and then you go down, and so on. And it can make it a little more elegant if you're wearing a most beautiful gown. So let's do the slightly more elaborate one. The step to the side. Go. Step to the side, the other foot back, and down, and that's it. And if in doubt, put your hands to yourself. That's it. Just hold them here. Right? And now, would you sit down, please? Oh no, ladies, stand up. I do beg your pardon. Because there's something else I want to tell you about the bustle. Because this was the century in which the bustle was introduced. And the bustle, of course, was a big roll here which took the skirt right out the back. And it made you look as if you had almost a platform there on which you could put parcels from Sears as you walked along. Now, when you shook hands with the bustle, there was a definite way of doing it. And it was almost imitating the bustle at the back with the arm. So if Julie was wearing the bustle and I was wearing the bustle, your right hand, of course, that's it, we would simply shake hands up here, like that. That's all it is. So ladies, will you face each other? Imagine you're wearing the bustle, and Sarah, you just stay in the middle. Ready? Off we go. That's it, shake hands. Thank you. And will you put words to it? Charmed and delighted. So one of you is charmed and one of you is delighted. Ready? Go.
Delighted.
Thank you, and sit down. Now, the men, servants. This was the age of the butler. And of course, in the plays of Oscar Wilde, we get these wonderful butler characters. Gentlemen, stand up. It is exactly the same as the gentleman does, except I would say when you're standing in the room, stand with your feet together. So rather than the gentleman's stance, which is this, it is this with your feet together and your thumbs down the seams of your trousers. So thumbs down the seams, and that's still the position for butlers today, and it is simply an incline. Now, according to the importance of the person you're inclining to, so you would probably go a bit lower, like that. All right, up you come, please. And a person of less importance. Ready, go. Thank you. That's it. And ladies, would you say to the butler, that will be all, and you'll use their name. So Lauren will say that will be all Nicholas, Jennifer will say that will be all Randall. Are you ready? But they wouldn't use the first name, they would use the last name. So you will say that will be all Kinder, that will be all Chow, and so on. Are you ready, ladies? Go.
That will be all, child.
Thank you, and you bow, and you go and sit down. Thank you. Not with the lady of the house, but we will now. And of course, servants, the women servants, just give the bob as earlier. just a bob and you can't go far wrong. So these are some of the movements of the period. And now we're going to get on to melodrama. Melodrama is part music, part drama, part mime, part action. It is always a tale with high moral values. It began early in the 1800s, and it became the theatre of the people, the popular theatre, for the rest of the century. And indeed, it's still with us today. Now, melodrama demands respect. It is so easy to guy it, to send it up, to make fun of it, but it must be played with sincerity and truth. Now, why does it demand respect? First of all, the plays are well constructed. Secondly, the characters are strong and definite, and they are wonderful character roles for any actor. Thirdly, the plot is clear and direct. So, it demands respect also because there's constant action within the plays. By constant action, I mean not only physical action, but mental action, emotional action. Something is always going on. And thirdly, the plays, of course, proclaim admirable values. Now, the basic character frameworks are these. In all the melodramas, you will find a hero. In all the melodramas, you will find the hero's friend. You will find the heroine and the heroine's friend. You will usually find the old parents or an older person who is very kind and considerate and knowing and wise. And of course, the villain. Now, the most popular melodrama in America, two of the most popular, were one called The Streets of New York, which was played in London as The Streets of London. All you do is change the title, you know, you can take it anywhere. The Streets of Hong Kong, it could be. And also The Drunkard, which is a story about somebody who comes to the big city, falls under the evil influences of drink and so on. But let's look back at these characters I told you a moment ago. We need a villain to hate, a hero to admire, and a heroine to love. So, we need total belief in what we're doing. We need immediacy of character, just the same as in the medieval theatre, exactly the same. We need passion. We need panache, which is bigness, broadness, not minding doing something in a large way. We need total vocal clarity. We need breadth of character, breadth of movement. And if I can put it into one little phrase, it would be this: adventure and be bold. Don't mind taking chances in melodrama. Well, just as you're sitting there, let us look at some of these characters. First of all, how would the hero sit? Now, this is only the gentleman. Are you ready? The hero. Go. So when we look at you, we know that you're strong, that you're upright, that you're virtuous, the sort of person we could rely on. And relax. Now let's have the hero's friend, the sidekick, comic, usually. A chap who gets on with everybody. Ready? The hero's friend. How would he sit? Go. He's a good guy, a regular fellow. That's it. And stop there. Now, ladies, it's your turn. The heroine. Pure, virtuous, ready. The heroine. Go. Gentlemen, you can look at the heroine next to you and see what you think. And now, the heroine's friend. Again, the comic sidekick. You know, this is almost like Oklahoma. The tum-tum tree. And stood on villains sitting there. By the way you sit, by the way you slurch into your chair, by the way you sink, the villain. And relax. Will you overdo that position a bit more, please, for the villain? Really, go to town, overdo it, go. Will you make sound as you do it? And stop. Now I'm going to ask you to relax, please. I'm going to ask you to do that once more, the extreme movement, and then gradually come back to your normal sitting position. but still have those villainous qualities. Okay? So you do the extreme, and then you go back into the reality. Are you ready? Villain! Aha! Now slowly move back, but you're still the villain. Okay? Let's do it once more. Mr. Hyde, go! And Dr. Jekyll. And stop there. Come back to your own sweet selves. Oh, of course, if you look at this, the hero, the heroine, the hero's sidekick, the heroine's sidekick, it's exactly the same as Oklahoma. You've got the hero, you've got Curly, you've got his friend, the chaps, everything up to date in Kansas City. You've got the heroine, you've got Ado Annie. You've got the same characters. You also usually have the old gentleman or the old lady or the aunt who's kind to everybody. And believe me, melodrama has affected our theatre, our popular theatre, right from the time it was first presented in the theatre to now. Now, in America, the most common of the melodramas, or the most popular of the melodramas, were The Drunkard and The Streets of New York, which is interesting. It was exactly the same play as The Streets of London, but the street names were changed. So it's the same play. So melodrama needs a villain to hate, a hero to admire, and a heroine to love. And the acting needs total belief in what you're doing. Immediacy of character, exactly the same as acting in medieval plays. It needs passion, it needs panache. That means bigness, don't mind being big. And of course all the movements in melodrama tend to be big because the theatres were big. And so in order to get over, you had to be big enough to be seen right at the back of the galleries. It needs total vocal clarity, it needs breadth of character and breadth of movement. And if I can put it into one simple phrase, melodrama, it would be this: adventure and be bold. Adventure and be bold. Well, let's try something now. Will you stand up with a partner, ladies and gentlemen, together, please? Now, one of you is going to be the sculptor, and one of you is going to be the statue. Gentlemen, you're going to be the statue. And first of all, we want a statue, gentlemen, of what you think the hero would look like. So that even if I didn't understand the words of the play, when I looked at you, I'd know that you are strong, upright, firm, virtuous, all the other things, qualities that a hero has. What are the qualities, some of the qualities that a hero has in your opinion? Joseph, one quality.
Good looking.
Good looking. David.
Chivalry.
Again?
Chivalry.
Thank you. Nicholas.
Kindness to all.
Kindness to all, even small children.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Randall.
Romantic.
Romantic and
Trustworthy.
trustworthy. I like the way you rub your hands. Thank you. So, let's do it, please. Gentlemen, a position as a statue. Now, go. Now, sculptor, that's the lady. I want you to adjust that position, to tell them to change their facial expression, to adjust their head. Will you adjust your still statue of the hero and make it even more heroic? Do it now, please. You can talk to them. You can tell them what you like to do. Talk to them, talk to them, talk to them. That's it. That's it. That's it. Fine. Okay. That's it. Hold it still. And relax. Thank you. And now, please, it is the heroine. So, ladies, will you go into a position for the heroine? But first of all, what do you think a heroine's qualities are? Yes, please.
Delicate.
Delicate.
Strong-willed.
Strong-willed.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Innocent.
Thank you.
Clever.
Thank you. Are you ready, please? Get all those. Go. That's it. Now do something. Tell her what to do. Does she have her eyes open? A still position, which if photographed or sculpted would say, this can only be a heroine. What I'm trying to get you to do is to act with your bodies, not just with your words. Okay, let's look at these heroines. And stop there. And finally, the gentleman, it's your turn again as the villain. Now, what are the qualities of the villain? Ready, Joseph?
Intelligent.
Aha!
Cowardly.
Aha!
Clever.
Aha!
Evil.
Mischievous.
Thank you. Mischievous. I like the rubbing of the hands. It's rather nice. Ready? Okay, off we go. Now adjust them, please, in a still position, which if photographed would say villain immediately. If you're happy with what they've got, or the tension of their body, that's it. Anything else? Look at them from other angles. Does their back say villain? Do their legs say villain? Does their butt say villain? And stop there. All right, so first of all, we have to take chances with our bodies. Don't mind doing it. There has to be truth behind it, by which I mean the feeling behind it must be as strong as the position you give, or else it'll be false. No, you've got to have strong feeling in. So let's do it this time with lines, which will be a little easier. First of all, ladies, sit down. Gentlemen, I'm going to give you a line from HMS Pinafore. And this is the line spoken by Dick Deadeye, the villain of the piece, when he has finally managed to tell the captain about what's going on between the captain's daughter and a sailor, and he has got his revenge. And the words are foiled, 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 with the words they are before it. So they are foiled, foiled, foiled. Now you'll find these triplexes in all the melodramas, 3 words repeated. Always build them. Let's see what you can do with it. They are foiled, 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 and I want you to hold the final attitude on the third foiled. Ready? Go.
They are foiled! Foiled! Foiled!
Hold it still. Thank you. And relax. Thank you very much. Ladies, you come up, please. Gentlemen, sit down. Now, you are the heroine in the same piece, HMS Pinafore, and you're looking scornfully at this sailor who has plighted his troth to you. People don't plight troths anymore. It's in the old days. We always used to plight troths all the time. Right. He's plighted his troth, which means he says he's loved you, and you are rejecting his love, and you say, your proffered love I haughtily reject. Go, sir. Your proffered love I haughtily reject. Go, sir. Ready? Go. Your proffered
Your proffered love I haughtily reject. Go, sir.
Thank you. Now, can you hold the position, please, if you will? Small point, if you're doing a go, it can always help to go right across the body in this period. So, go, sir, it gives it more force than simply go, sir, like that. And you've got to be careful with the angle of the hand, because if you do that, it means go upstairs. If you go down there, it means get on the floor, across. Ready? Your proffered love, I haughtily reject. Go.
Your proffered love I haughtily reject. Go, sir.
Thank you, and sit down. Gentlemen, stand up. The hero this time. Is not my love as good as another's? Is not my heart as true as another's? Just that bit. Is not my love as good as another's? Is not my heart as true as another's? As you're inciting your fellow sailors almost to rebellion. You are determined to go and woo Josephine. Ready, go.
Is not my love as good as another's? Is not my heart as true as another's?
Thank you. Now, we won't go on to hands, eyes, ears. We shall start probably talking, using them, and it looks a bit strange. So let's just simply do that again, please. Again, with as much bravado, as much passion, as much panache as you can. Ready, go.
Is not my love as good as another's? Is not my heart as true as another's?
Hold it still. Thank you, and stop. I'm a great believer, do sit down please, particularly in melodrama, that one could stop the action at any time, freeze it, and the audience would know exactly what was going on. They would know who was the prime character in the scene at the moment, they would know what the scene was about, and so on. And this is what a director has to do in melodrama, to make sure that everything is visually strong, as well as vocally strong, as well as emotionally strong. So, don't neglect in melodrama the still attitude. We tend to think this is rather false, holding a still position. But to be still on stage, in character, in mood, is still the most important position you can be in. Do not neglect these still positions. We've talked a lot about the villain, so let me end the melodrama section, all too quick, I'm afraid, with something the villain would definitely use, and that is a laugh. Now, many actors have problems doing laughs on stage. I don't know why. There are all kinds of methods for doing them. But let me teach you a method for the laugh sinister, the villain's laugh. All you do is start laughing with your mouth closed. Like that. Will you do it with your mouth closed? Go. Thank you. Now, of course, you've got to feel amused. Ready? Again, go. Now, all you do is open your mouth as you're doing that. So it is this. Ready? Go. Now let's imagine you're doing some dastardly deed. Maybe you're strangling somebody. You know, the next president of the... We'd better not say that. Ready? Okay. Strangling. Ready? Go. And now put a line to it. At last I've got you, my little beauty. At last I got you, my little beauty. This is actually in a melodrama called Maria Martin or The Murder in the Red Barn. Ready? At last I got you, my little beauty. Go.
At last I've got you, my little beauty.
You're laughing. Thank you. There are so many things to remember. But again, in melodrama, remember this for the villain. A vein of sneerery to run through the performance. A vein of sneerery. So, play out. Play for truth. Enlarge the feelings. Think of grand opera. And you can't go far wrong. But please, 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 don't guy it. Play it for real, as if these situations are true and real and right for these people. Believe in it in exactly the same way as we believe in all our acting. And now, let us look at the plays of Oscar Wilde. Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wells Wilde, or more commonly known, Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde himself said this: "The acquired notions of propriety are stronger than natural instincts, so that all behaviour, both public and private, was determined by society." And Oscar Wilde's plays are about the society of the time, the high society, the ruling classes, the important people in the country. They are plays of manners, they are plays of behaviour, they are plays of wit, they are plays of elegance. They have to be spoken with easy precision. Remember this phrase, please. It was given to me when I was a young drama student. It's stuck in my head ever since. Think of every line being as crisp and crunchy as lettuce. So when you say the lines, think of having this crisp lettuce within your mouth. And that's the way we have to articulate these wonderful lines of Oscar Wilde. We have to make sure the attitudes are correct. What do I mean? The way young people behave with older people. This was a time when older people had respect of the young. The young were thought to be rather troublesome. Now, the young get all the attention, and it's the old people who tend to get pushed to one side, not them. So the attitude of the old and the respect they show, by the respect they are shown, by young people, is important to be presented in the plays. The attitudes of the masters and mistresses to the servants. This was a time when jobs were very scarce for the working classes. And so the servants were very subservient to their employers in public. What they did out of public is entirely different. But certainly when on duty, they had this enormous respect for their employers. The next thing, of course, we have to remember is the attitude of the people within the play to their surroundings. The way they move in these elegant salons, the way they seem to be totally at home in all situations. We have to remember, when playing Oscar Wilde, that the last words in the phrase are vital. There should be no dropping of that last word. If in doubt, hit the last word in the phrase. And we must remember the clothing of the time, which was rather tight for both gentlemen and ladies as well. Ladies with their corset, and gentlemen with sometimes with their corset as well, but their tightly fitting coats, vests, waistcoats, and so on. It's an interesting thing, but when one studies period behaviour, the behaviour in different periods, the clothing and the behaviour is linked. The looser the clothing, the looser the behaviour of the period. It's very interesting, but it's been so all through the ages. And in the periods where everybody is very tightly corseted, the behaviour in public is exceptionally formal. Now, nowadays, we're in a loose age. So that means that the sort of behaviour we do every day tends to be certainly looser than those of our parents and grandparents. Well, the best way to learn anything about Oscar Wilde, of course, is to look at his plays. And probably the greatest of all his plays was The Importance of Being Earnest, which is still played at practically every theatre festival in the country to this day, and will continue to be played because it is such a superb play full of wonderfully amusing situations and the most elegant, witty lines. Please, 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 if you become a director, do not cast a man as Lady Bracknell. That seems to be a habit in America only. It doesn't happen anywhere else. But somebody at some time got the habit of casting a man as Lady Bracknell and everybody else follows suit. It changes the play totally. It becomes a drag act, when in fact it shouldn't be that. So, ladies, you stand up for your rights and demonstrate with banners outside the theatre with Lady Bracknell is a lady underlined, and stop them doing it. Well, let's please learn then from this scene. I'm going to ask two of you to play the parts. Lauren, will you play the part of Lady Bracknell, if you will, please? And Randall, would you play the part of Jack Worthing? So you'll bring a chair up, please. Now what we're doing, you've got the scene there with you, I think, of the opening scene where you meet each other for the first time. In fact, Lady Bracknell, you've just come into the room and you've discovered Jack Worthing on his knees to your daughter, proposing marriage. And you don't want anything of this. He may think he's going to marry her, but by heavens, you're going to make sure that you vet him first. So this really is the vetting interview. Would you kindly sit on the chair? That's it. Can you move the chair just fractionally, just an inch further back? That's fine, that's grand. Right, now let's have a read through first of all, and just enjoy listening to the lines. Ready? Lady Bracknell, please, interviewing Jack Worthing. Go.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments chiefly.
That is satisfactory.
Thank you very much. Well, you're getting on very well already without any interruptions from me. But let's go back to the beginning. Now, first of all, she must be a terrifying figure. The dowagers of this time, the older women, the women with influence, were terrifying creatures. beetle-browed, they could with a look silence a servant, stop a horse, panicking and bolting, practically, and all kinds of other things. So you've got to be, now hold yourself tall. Now a small point about Lady Bracknell, and any other duchesses like this that you play, when you turn your head to look at somebody, get into the habit of turning head and shoulders as one. Rather than that, just lift the whole upper part of the body and turn the whole upholstery round towards him. Right, so let's begin at the beginning, and you're very graciously asking him to sit in your presence. Being a gentleman, of course, he would stand until you told him to sit. Ready? So, be gracious and let him sit down. He will not say there is no chair there. I know we haven't put one, but we'll imagine there's a set there. Okay? Right? Right, off we go.
You may take a
Now,
seat.
can we get that character right at the beginning? By being forward, first of all, then deciding how you're going to do it. First of all, you're going to get him sitting down. So, up, round, look at him, and sweetly say it. Ready? Go. So, can I ask you to lift the upper part of your body? It's this part here, Lauren. It's a bit difficult, but it's that, and round. Okay, ready? Go.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
Right, now just a moment. That's grand. That's grand. Could you keep your eyes on him for just a moment, please? Now, what has he just done? He's contradicted you. You know, you've been so gracious to say sit down. He is refusing. Now, this automatically puts him in bad light. But being British, you don't show it. You keep smiling the whole time at him. Right. Are you ready? Again, please. And you're showing your independence. You're going to stand up to this Gorgon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
Now, will you look at your text, please? What is after Lady Bracknell?
A comma.
Use it.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact.
Okay, now, somehow you've got to make the audience see this dear Duchess of Bolton. We can almost see you and these other matronly ladies comparing lists. We'll have him, we won't have him, no, we can't have him, and so on. Terrifying women. I mean, they are organising all these young men's futures and all these young ladies' futures. The dear Duchess of Bolton. She's obviously a woman of some importance, or she wouldn't drop her name. She's a name dropper, Lady Bracknell. Again, please, go. Just the same bit. Although I have the same list. Go.
Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has, we work together, in fact.
Is that the best list of all, would you say? Of the most eligible young men?
Yes.
Yes, I think so. And, in fact, you not only have the same list, but you work with her as well, don't you? Get it out, all these things in it, ready? You may not know who the dear Duchess of Bolton is, it doesn't really matter. You're rather concerned about getting your lady, you know. Again, please.
Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has.
Now, can you notice, everybody, what's happening? As soon as she does that, the articulation suddenly takes on a sharper edge. And this is what it has to have. It has to be razor sharp. Take it again, please. Although I have the same list.
Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has, we work together, in fact. However, I am...
That's it. I think, actually, this is a change, isn't it? What's after fact? What's the punctuation?
Period.
Right, use the period. So it's a new thought. So we work together, in fact. And then change. However, even though you're not down on the list the dear Duchess of Bolton has, I am prepared, and you're being extremely gracious, aren't you, here and kind to this nothing standing in front of you. Ready again? From the dear, we work together. Go?
We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires.
Thank you. Enter your name. Now, that's interesting. Where are you going to enter the name?
In my little list of...
In your list. So I think prop-wise, maybe you have a very delicate little notepad and book and pencil which you take out, and you may have all the questions already written down, the interview questions, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That they've got to pass this test, and you make a little check mark and so on. You can do all this with business. It was done, of course. They used to carry these little books around with them and make notes. Right, we work together, in fact, same point, go.
We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Right, now that's the first question, so I think the actress needs to change slightly just before that. You get the idea?
Yes.
Okay, now don't let your eyes wander. Just have your eyes on her the whole time.
Okay.
Or into the middle distance, but don't let them wander, right? Do you smoke? Go.
Do you smoke?
Now this is a yes-no question. That is a yes-no answer, rather. You've got a 50% chance of saying the right thing. Should you be honest? Should you say the thing you really wanted to say, and so on? I mean, when I joined the Air Force long, long ago, and I went for an officer interview to be an officer, and I lied at my interview. They asked me what my hobbies were, and I said photography, because I thought it sounded good. And they started asking me about cameras, and I hadn't a clue about cameras at all, and they soon tripped me up. And on the paper I saw they'd written unreliable, not officer material. Well, it's the same sort of thing here. Do you smoke? Now, has he to say the truth, or is he going to say the thing he thinks you want to hear? Now, what, in your mind, do you think the answer should be? What does she want?
She wants the truth.
She wants the truth. Yes, but if you say you do smoke, do you think that will be a disadvantage to that sort of lady?
No, at this time it was considered social grace along with snuff.
Okay, right. As long as you've got something in your mind. Right, do you smoke? Hit him with it, please. Notice the K at the end. Use it. Smoke.
Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it.
Now, this is a positive answer. So I think there has to be something from the actor. You know, phew, I got over the first step. Now let's think what else is coming. Right, and it gets more difficult as it goes on. I am glad to hear it, right? And give him a little compliment with a smile, please. We English can always smile and say horrible things the whole time. Yes?
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at.
Everything is becoming positive.
I have always been of opinion
that's a new question, isn't it?
Yes.
A very good age to be married at. Check.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing.
Can you make those two words different?
Either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
That's it, and that's lovely, isn't it, that which. Can I just explain to you that to this day, in upper-class Britain, WH is pronounced as wh. So, when, why, and if you do it here, which do you, it works rather than which. Do you understand me? Wh. Put the H before the W. Go.
Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it.
Another one.
I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural
Now
ignorance.
notice the wonderful thing in the scene is that from being almost short-phrased, she gets longer and longer and longer, as if she's conversing with an equal. And Wilde has so cunningly done this that it becomes as if you're almost having a conversation with a friend, and then suddenly the handbag line comes in at the end and wrecks everything. It's a beautifully constructed scene. Anyway, let's go from the beginning up to there and try and get all those things. Ready? Now, all the gentlemen who are sitting watching, could you be mentally playing Jack Worthing as you're sitting there? Ladies, as you're sitting watching, can you be mentally saying the lines with Lady Bracknell? And in fact, you can be looking at the gentleman sitting next to you if you so wish. Are you ready? And let's begin the scene. Go.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
Thank you very much. Now, every time you come in with a question, it has to be different from the previous talk. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Suddenly you hit him with a question. So it's as if you're almost letting the man relax, and then you suddenly punch him in again. Now, it is important to remember all these small details and work on them. So the first thing is this business of the English, we English, who can keep that facade on, even though inside we may be saying something totally different. An ideal thing is to read D.H. Lawrence's poem on superiority, which really gives a sense of what the British way of thinking is. The English are so nice, so awfully nice. They're the nicest people in the world. And what's more, they're very nice about being nice. And so it goes on. It's a terrific poem, but it's a wonderful poem to learn. So, this time, will you remember your audience? Remember, you are acting with her, you are acting with him, but the apex of that triangle is that person sitting at the back of the audience who has got a hearing aid. He, she has to hear as well as anybody else. So this time, please, play it with panache, a little of the melodrama, bravado. Don't mind overdoing it. Please, will you get your corset on, Lauren? Sit tighter, as if you're in a vice. Will you please stand tall, as if you're in a vice as well? Are you ready, please? And away we go.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you're not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind.
All right, thank you very much. Well, we could go through the scene and run it and so on like this. But the thing is, what we would do is run it and run it and run it and run it and run it till we hadn't got to think about all these things. So it becomes second nature to do these changes, to do these whiches, the whats, the whys. But always remember, when you're doing wild, what are you wanting? Keep asking yourself that as your character. What are you wanting? Keep asking that as your character. It's the same in all acting, of course, except here we do it under a formal, almost facade. But the truth has to be behind that facade. Thank you both very much. Do sit down, please. So, to sum up, Oscar Wilde plays about marriage, plays about morality, plays about manners, plays about social position, plays about power, plays about the confidence of the upper classes, a magnified reflection of the times and people. But if you remember nothing else, in this period, crisp lettuce. Just remember that. So, very briefly, we'll talk to each other as if you are crunching crisp lettuce. I'm asking for trouble here because I know somebody will do all that stuff. But just imagine, inside your mouth is crisp lettuce, as you will say, hello, Amber will say to Joseph, and Julie will say to Brad, and so on, and you talk together about what you're going to do the rest of this day. Crisp lettuce, go.
Hello, Randall. Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Doing well, and you?
Very well. How are you looking forward to tonight?
I'm looking very much forward to tonight.
Can we have it crisper, please? Even crisper lettuce, if you will, please. Ready, go.
Very much awfully crisp lettuce. Do you know what's happening?
I have absolutely no idea. As I was saying earlier, I'm a your husband, not the entertainment.
Oh, I definitely understand that.
So, stop there, thank you. So if you're playing a play about upper-class British people, find out how upper-class British people feel. This is the important thing. Don't just imitate them, but read these poems I mentioned, like the D.H. Lawrence and so on. Read anything you can about this rather strange nation, which I belong. So it is a magnified reflection, as I say, of the times and the people. So, Oscar Wilde. Well, let us now look at just one or two other people in this 20th century now, where there's a very definite style. Family Reunion, The Cocktail Party, and the great play Murder in the Cathedral were all written by T.S. Eliot, the man who wrote Cats, the musical. Well, he didn't write Cats the musical, he wrote a series of poems called Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, and that was set to music. But it's interesting in his plays because they're all in verse, and in all the plays, the characters sometimes speak their thoughts aloud. Sometimes they speak to other characters on the set, sometimes they speak their thoughts aloud to the audience. So in the plays of T.S. Eliot, you've got to work out when they are playing out and sharing their thoughts, when they're playing into the scene. And a fascinating thing about Murder in the Cathedral, for instance, set in medieval times, is that Eliot has written it with 4 beats in the line, exactly the same as medieval verse. And so it has the same effect. And the characters, as I say, speak in their inner thoughts, but also there is the chorus in the plays. And that is where a group of people all speak at the same time. And if you have got this in a play, it's very difficult to do. But the actors must think as one, as well as speaking as one. They mustn't be individuals within that chorus, even though they are individuals, of course. But coming together in chorus, it heightens the emotional power at that point of the play. But chorus speaking, that's a whole new subject and a whole new class. George Bernard Shaw, you may be in one of his plays like Major Barbara, plays like Pygmalion. Well, if you're ever doing a Shaw play, do this. The key to playing in Shaw's plays is Shaw himself. He wrote prefaces, very long prefaces, to all his plays. So please read and study the preface, the introduction. That will tell you how to do it, because it's Shaw speaking. Now, being old, I've been very fortunate to work with some people who knew some of these people. And one of my teachers was a lady called Ellen Pollock. And George Bernard Shaw wrote a play for her called The Village Wooing, and Ellen Pollock played the lead in that. So she was able to tell us as drama students how Shaw behaved. He gave every move. He gave the inflection for every line. It was constant line readings. He drove the director mad because he wouldn't keep out of it. But every stage direction in a Shaw play was written by Shaw himself. It wasn't put in later. Every italic in Shaw's plays was written by Shaw himself. So if you want to do Shaw well, the preface and look at the text. And one thing he said, Ellen Pollock mentioned this to us, he said that one word in each of my lines is more important than the others. So find that word. And then we have Noel Coward, and of course with Noel Coward plays, the dance, learn the Charleston, have the effortless pick-up of the dialogue, quick cues, almost like restoration, and the total ease of the characters personified. Well, in all period plays, if you just get one element right, in the production, in the character, in the situation, just one thing, it will make it more convincing to your audience. Realize that different periods need different approaches. Realize that the dances of the period, the music of the period, the art, the architecture, the poetry, the costumes, all reflect the spirit of the period. Please do regular vocal practice. Please rehearse all bows, curtsies, fans, anything, until they are part of you and you haven't got to think about doing it. Remember, you can never know too much. And remember, learn it all and then forget it. Think only of the play. And adventure and be bold. I wish you success whenever you're playing in any period play. It's been a pleasure to work with you all, and thank you very much for the way you've received the work. Thank you all.